who are pretty much on top of your game challenge yourself these days? Where do the challenges come from for you?
I think that there are different things. It can be songwriting or producing something and making a song come to life. To me, it's always like a giant jigsaw puzzle. Guitar playing, everything, you know, just up in your game. But creating a song or an album or something, and just making it all work together. So it's the missing piece of the jigsaw thing. And that always happens. But I think it's also the most exciting part of it as well. Because when you actually nail it, it's like, you know, it's eureka, it's just perfect. So it's constantly happening. You know, I think the more you let in, the more stuff you let inspire you, the more stuff that comes out. And it's like fly. I never get writer's block or anything like it. In fact, my iPhone is jammed with ideas and half songs and stuff, and I just don't get the time to do it all. So it's that's pretty cool. It's a nice challenge to have, you know.
I would have to agree on that one. The writing is the main thing for me. I'm always looking for that melody that is really going to transmit more feeling than anything I've ever written before. And it always seems like it's right in front of me. I can almost touch it. So I'm always motivated to keep searching, you know, for that perfect phrase. And then physically, yeah, once you write it, you have to teach yourself how to play it.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a wonderful little cat and mouse game, you know. It's not, the writing isn't generated from the physical ability to play. It's not an end product of a technical exercise or something like that, or ability. It's the opposite way. You dream a great melody, and then you teach your fingers how to play it right, and then the technique comes in to help you out eventually.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's one thing to be in the studio and face challenges, because you have a lot of opportunities to kind of get it right. But for me, it comes with live performance. Every night you kind of have another chance to try to, you know, top what you did, and just try. It's like, you know, playing a game. You just want to win every night, and you don't. And there's always something that you just could have done better, and you try to figure out what's the magic formula. Did I get enough sleep last night? You know, why did I play good tonight? I didn't have any. I had a bagel this morning. That's what it was. So I'll have a bagel every morning, and I'll play. But then you don't. So it's just kind of trying to figure out how to like be the most consistent performer for me. That's like one of the biggest challenges, not to get too inside your own head, and just to enjoy the moment and let everything that you worked on come out the way it's supposed to come out without getting tripped up by stupid things. It's a big challenge.
Well, I was wondering, to sort of get to the level that all you guys are in terms of your technique and your playing, how would you describe yourself? I'll give you 3 words.
Wow.
Ambitious, disciplined, or neurotic?
I'll take all 3.
Yeah, right.
For 10, Alex.
Yeah, it has to be. But I'd also add work in progress. You know, that's the other one. You know, because it is a constant thing, right? Work in progress. Yeah. So all the above.
I definitely agree. If I had to pick one, I'd probably say discipline, because I think if you're talking about the craft part, the technique part, I think you have to have discipline to put in the time consistently. There's no shortcuts, you know. Yeah.
I mean, does that sort of permeate the rest of your life? Like I you know, in other areas of your life, I know that Phil and you are like bodybuilders, and you know, no.
Well, yeah, try and keep healthy. Yeah.
I mean, you know, would your spouses or kids say, yes, disciplined or not?
I think, yeah, but it's an also.
They're here. I can ask them.
There you go.
What do you guys think?
Which of the 3?
Perfect.
That's funny.
So Joe,
I'm not into bodybuilding, but I am disciplined in search of the best bag of potato chips the world Still have not given that up.
What are the best ones on the tour so far?
Well, it's hard to, I could really go on and on about that. But now that I'm in New York City, I'm thinking Wise potato chips, you know, it's that kind of thing. It's because I'm here, but it's, people laugh at it, but it's a way of life, really. It's a discipline. You have to stay focused. You can't eat just any chip. And you eat the right chip, and like John said, maybe you play better that night, and then you realize, oh, I should have that chip every night.
So if the next record has a song called Ruffles or Pringles on it, we know the whole...
Comes in a very oily package. Yeah.
I think there's definitely, I'm sure Phil will agree, there's definitely a parallel between, you know, training
Definitely.
and guitar playing, because it's the same type of thing where it's repetition, consistency, challenging, and form is kind of what makes you better technically on the guitar. And then if you want to, you know, train and work out and stuff like that, it's the same thing. You can't cram it all in one day.
Right.
You can't like do it one day and not do it for 10 days and start. You're not going to get anywhere. It's like that. And you have to have good form so that you get somewhere. So.
It is, and the consistency, you know, it comes back to that. It's exactly the same thing, you know, like John said, you know, take some time off. And we've actually been semi-joking but serious. You know, we've been playing every night nearly on this tour, and we have a night off, and we're like, oh my God, it's something weird. You know, the playing's not as good coming back, and we're not as comfortable. We actually like the playing every single night. It's something really cool about it. But again, you can apply that consistency to the art of playing and to anything physical as well. The moment you do anything half-heartedly, it will kind of leave you at some point.
Joe, congratulations on your new record.
Yeah,
It's your
absolutely.
first top 10 record of your career. What happens next? Could you tell us about it? I mean, the rhythm section's pretty interesting on this one.
Yes. So we have Chad Smith on the drums from the Chili Peppers and Chickenfoot. Yeah. And the great Glenn Hughes playing bass guitar. What a crazy rhythm section to stand in a room with. That was so exciting. It was really a hunch I had while driving around Europe on the last tour that I needed a rhythm section that would help me sort of come back full circle to the kind of music I really wanted to explore, the kind of music that I was sort of introduced to when I was a young musician. And these guys, I think, shared the same kind of roots that I did, and they had the energy and I suppose the personality where they wanted to be team players, but at the same time, they had that, I guess it's a part of a musical ego where they insist on putting their stamp on something. And that really added this great energy to the proceedings. And we wound up with just a really lively set of recordings to pick from. And that made it so much easier to make the whole record.
Well, the titles sort of say it. It's energy, head rush, thunder high on the mountain.
I know. They're all songs that are based on human themes. There's no science fiction. It's all about human emotions, what it feels like to have your 2 feet on the ground walking through life, and the hopes, desires, aspirations, good times, bad times, all that kind of stuff. And those, both Glenn and Chad, they really did get it right from the beginning, and they brought all their humanity, so to speak, to every track that we cut. It was really exciting.
You're sort of one of the few musicians that I know that changes out his rhythm section quite a bit. I mean, you play with a lot of different... How does that affect you as a player? Do you do that sort of to push yourself in different directions, or...?
I think so. A lot of a lot of the sessions get arranged mainly because I have this idea about the compositions that I want to explore, and I start to imagine who would be best to create that vibe as a listener, not so much as a musician, like who can, you know, play these kinds of notes or has that kind of sound. I'm really just thinking about the movie, so to speak, in your mind they create when you hear them, the image that you get of them as players, and the mystery that they bring into something. And Chad Smith is a perfect example of a guy that we all know he can play drums like crazy, and he plays a lot of different styles. But if you've ever been in a room with him or seen him in concert, you know that his personality will fill up an arena, and you can't avoid it. You just fall in love with him as a person, as well as his drums. They become one big force. And so once it got in my mind that, well, if I could talk him into doing the record, then these songs that I've written would really come alive. And it's kind of a hunch, but I'm thinking once I plug that personality into this song, like a song like Energy, it's like it was written for him. And I had that in my mind with Glenn as well, that he would be what, you know, they call him the voice of rock, but I always thought his bass playing represented all the things I loved about rock bass playing. And so I had to sort of write towards that, to give him the feeling that he could walk right in and occupy that whole space, you know. So it's you know what I mean? So I'm writing with those people in mind, and so that's why the rhythm sections change, you know.
Ah, the puppet master. Yeah. So you've worked with both of these guys. I want to know who tells the better stories, Sammy Hagar or Glenn Hughes?
Ooh, that's a tough one. First of all, they're both lead singers, so that's all I have to say about that. Getting them not to talk is really hard. But Sammy's got a lot of stories. I suppose the thing is that Sammy remembers all of them. I mean, that's the thing. And Glenn is more artistic, so you're not quite sure sometimes if it's you know, something he's just spinning around you just to have his way with you, or if it's an actual factual event, you know, that he's reporting.
So John, you're you know, the records with Dream Theater came out a couple years after you know, Joe's record, and I wondered whether Joe's playing, especially those earlier records, had any influence on you.
Can't you tell? Absolutely. Absolutely. The first time I heard Joe, I was completely floored, blown away, not only by his guitar playing, but by the songs I was hearing. And I was saying this earlier, my wife is here, our wedding song is always, you know, you can't, it's like, I just can't get his music out of my head. And in fact, to the point where I've said this before, but the first G3 I did with Joe and Steve Vai, when we get up to do the jam, I was literally so self-conscious that Joe was going to hear his licks come out because I was so influenced. And I don't know if you noticed that, but no. So now I do it more as a joke. I play them on purpose to get his attention. But Joe is an absolute huge influence on me, for sure.
I mean, did you ever think about, you know, back in those days, like doing the sort of trio Guitar Hero format, or was that bigger ensemble thing that Dream Theater always sort of in your DNA?
To me, it was always the band thing. It wasn't a solo thing. You know, I was a huge Rush fan. I was a huge Maiden fan, Metallica, and when I would, you know, not only listen to the albums, but go to the concerts or watch some, you know, video documentary thing and see them traveling the world and interacting with their fans and everything that went along with the albums that came out, the artwork, the subculture, you know, the band interaction. To me, I always wanted to form a band like Yes or Rush or Metallica or Maiden and do that type of thing. So it really wasn't until you asked me to do G3 in 2001 that I kind of was like, well, I've never done this before. I'm going to have to figure out how to be a solo guy. But the band thing was always the initial thing for me.
So Phil, you know, Def Leppard was already pretty much established when Joe and John came along. But I was sort of wondering whether these young guys coming up, whether that made you a little nervous as a guitar player, or did you feel like you were basically playing a bit of a different game with Def Leppard?
Very much so, but again, like I said earlier, I've been inspired by them, you know, and still to this, actually they're getting better and better and better. I think the trick is to keep improving. They absolutely have. I mean, if anyone's coming to the show, when is it? Next week? Who's coming to the Beacon? Yeah.
The Beacon.
You'll see, you know, it's a constant evolution. It doesn't stop. And I think one of the things I've noticed about being in a band that's nearly 40 years old, it's rare for artists to keep improving. And in this case, that's not the case. They carry on improving and inspiring. In our band in Def Leppard, we try and do that. You know, we kind of sing better than we did the year before. We do vocal exercise and warm-ups. This is another thing I've learned on the G3 tour. You know, it's like, well, what do you do beforehand, Joe and John? Joe warms up, and that's very different from practicing. And me and John were talking about that. You can actually burn out by practicing too much, especially on a gig day. So what Joe does, he actually warms up, and that's something drastically different. It's like the difference between working out and training. There is a difference, and you can overdo it and you can mess things up, or you can't, or you leave it alone and don't do enough of it. So there's a perfect balance, and you know, that's the thing, is to improve all the time. And that's so no, I was inspired by them and still am. I think that, you know, it's and I always get that when I first saw Return to Forever, you know, I actually remember people saying exactly that, I want to give up. But for me, it was something different. It was like, this inspires me to push myself even further.
Well, you have besides G3 and Def Leppard, you have another project which is really, really cool. You have this band Delta Deep that explores the blues side of playing. And you have a new record that just came out too, a live one. Could you tell us a bit about the band and the record? And
Sure. The record we actually recorded live. We done two legs of a tour. We done the West Coast and then the East Coast. The East Coast one turned out great. We done it at Daryl's house, this one particular show, and we nailed it all in one night in Portland, New York. And it was like, wow, we ain't going to get better than that. Even with the mistakes, this is awesome. The band is me playing guitar and doing a bit of singing. Debbie Blackwell Cook, who's from New York. She was a gospel singer.
Great singer.
Unbelievable,
Amazing,
yeah. And she sang at my wedding. And ever since then, you know, we started, you know, singing around the house. She'd be there, you know, I've known my wife forever. And it wasn't long before we actually started writing songs. And then we got Forrest Robinson, who used to play with India RE, TLC, Joe Sample and the Crusaders, to name a few others. But all he wanted to do was play double kick drum metal. So we thought somewhere in between there, you know, he's going to be perfect for this. And then Robert DeLeo from Stone Temple Pilots is on bass guitar. And he couldn't do this tour right now because he's doing STP stuff and doing some work with Joe Perry. So Craig Martini stepped in, who I met with Joe at the G4 camp, and who was playing with Paul Gilbert, who was just a monster. And so yeah, we're doing the Delta Deep stuff on this tour, and a combination of instrumental stuff as well. So it's the show is great. You know, we're very different players, but then we play together at the end, and that's always amazing. It's awesome every single night, and everyone's show is very different. So the whole thing as a show, looking at it, is actually, and I've asked people, they say this is amazing. It's not what they expected. You
know, in some ways, playing the blues is almost a little bit the opposite of what Joe and John are traditionally associated with. You know, you're always just trying to find that sort of one note to really hammer home. Do you find it, though, difficult to focus in that kind of way when everybody else is sort of whizzing around?
No, not at all. I mean, you know, again, from years of playing with Def Leppard, we've always focused on what we do, and then you can enjoy what everyone else does as well. You know, you actually, if you focus on just what you're doing. The other thing, the vocal thing, is probably the most challenging thing that we have in Def Leppard, because it's a physical thing. And you know, you can get a cold or something and you're off or something. But we work at the harmonies very, very hard. You know, it's something that never gets actually any easier, that part. But again, you have to warm up with that. So that's a constant, you know.
Has the blues sort of always been a presence, or is this something that you've explored more lately?
No, actually, when I first got my electric guitar, it was Ritchie Blackmore, it was Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, and they were all kind of electric blues players that just played loudly, and the vibrato was, you know, it was Buddy Guy, Albert King. It was those guys that they you know, got the idea from. So as soon as I started playing, it was that. I had this album called the Guitar Album that I got on my 16th birthday with my first guitar, and it had Clapton, Hendrix, Roy Buchanan, B.B. King, Albert King, Shuggy Otis. It had all of these great blues players. So that was normal for me, you know, and actually hearing Jimmy Page, Zeppelin were a blues band. The Stones were a blues band. So I was very much immersed in a lot of that playing, and that's how you played normal rock guitar. And it was actually blues, just turned up a bit.
I mean, you guys actually do a cover of Black Dog, don't you?
We do, actually, yeah. It's on the album. And we do a cover of Mistreated, which, again, is a blues song. You know, it's kind of, it's right there. I think, you know, the vibrato thing, and again, going back to Jimi Hendrix, who's probably my all-time favorite guitar player, his vibrato was perfect. You know, it was just so expressive. And
His many vibratos.
Huh?
His many vibratos.
Absolutely, but it was so expressive. It always was. It was like even if he was making a mistake, it didn't matter. It was like he was trying to achieve something that was spectacular, always, you know.
So John, we touched on this for a second, but you're putting together this boot camp with absolutely a monstrous array of players. So, you know, do you just want to tell us a little bit about that? I've got a...
Sure. So last year I did my very first guitar camp. So Joe has done a bunch of those called the G4 experience, but this was my first time doing this. And what it basically is it's a 5-day period where, in my case, 200 campers come to this location on Long Island in Glen Cove, and it's at the mansion. Everybody stays there, and all day long you attend workshops, master classes, watch performances at night. Everybody kind of eats together, hangs out. Last year I was flipping burgers and barbecuing. This year we're doing it in the same place, first week in August, and the guest instructor list is amazing. So Al Di Meola will be there for one day doing a very special day. But Tony McAlpine will be there. Andy James.
Guthrie Govan.
Guthrie Govan will be there. And I haven't met Guthrie yet, but I hear nothing but amazing things.
Scary good.
I'm blown away by everything I've seen online on YouTube. I'm like, you know, it's ridiculous. So really looking forward to Guthrie being there. Jason Richardson, Rusty Cooley.
Tosin Abasi?
Tosin will be there. Tosin is awesome. He came in last year. A lot of these guys returned from last year. And we're going to have a bit of a Berkeley contingent. I went there 30-something years ago. And John Finn from Berkeley is going to come. And so, did I mention everybody? Did I get it right?
I think so.
I hope so. And it's going to be so much fun. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be cool. And, of course, Mike Mangini will be there and Dave LaRue, who are in my band. Yeah.
I was wondering, are this, you know, even G3, are these sort of learning experiences for you? I mean, everybody has their own, obviously their own style and their own signature in their playing, but can you still look outside of yourself at other players and learn things, or is it all an inner game for you?
No, for sure. I think it's actually... You'll find that most guitar players, like I said, Joe has done these before. We've done tours with multiple musicians. A camp like this, you have so many players. The common thread is that everybody is actually very open and willing to share and you know, very inquisitive about how do you do this or that. There's no weirdness, like ego stuff that gets in the way. Everybody's totally into, sharing what they know. And, on a nightly basis on this tour, like Phil was saying, I'm inspired. I'll watch these guys do something, and I'll just think to myself, wow, maybe I should try it that way. For even something like going from in-ear monitors to using earplugs with wedges. Like, well, Joe's doing that, and he plays great. Let me try that. You learn. The idea is to be open to kind of continuously learning, being willing to accept new ideas and try things, and that's what it's all about. So it's amazing.
Joe, backstage, you were telling me a story about your encounter with Les Paul. I thought maybe you could tell us about that.
Oh yeah. Well, many encounters with Les, but we were talking about what a funny and sharp character he was. Besides being a genius musician and inventor, if anybody had the pleasure of watching him perform at the Iridium, they know that he had a very sharp sense of humor. And you almost, when you went up there to play with him, you were like the straight guy, and you never were quite sure what was going to happen. As you said, he'd love to pull out obscure songs to take somebody out of their comfort zone and expose them right to the audience, all in good fun. It all made for good shows. One particular night, though, what you're talking about is I'd shown up to play with him, and it had been a long day. I almost got thrown off the roof by Zakk Wylde. And that's just how the day began. We'd spent maybe, 8 or 9 hours together. Anyway, so at the end of the night, we're on stage, we're playing. And in typical Les fashion, he being very cordial and leading the show, he asked me about my guitar. And I just happened to show up with this beautiful, brand new Surfing with the Alien guitar with the Silver Surfer on it. It was brand new. I hadn't really scratched it up yet. And so I innocently thought, oh, Les is really interested in what this guitar is. So just like a guitar nerd, I said, oh, well, thanks for asking, Les, Look at what I can do with this. And I made some crazy noise with a whammy bar. And he just looked at me and he said, oh, that's too bad. And I just shrunk. I was like, became the world's smallest guitar player. And then I laughed until I was crying. It was just too funny.
You guys have been playing the tour for a bit now, right? So I was wondering, do each one of you, is there a song that you would consider like the most demanding song that you have to play of the evening?
For me, it's the song Damage Control from my album Suspended Animation. It's just a crazy... I've said this before. I feel like I'm doing Damage Control the entire time I'm playing. It just has so many weird things about it, and time signatures and technical challenges and things. So that's a concentration song, that one.
Do your lips move when you're counting?
I haven't seen it.
Something else moves when I'm counting. I don't know what that means. I don't know why I said that.
I don't know what it means, but I'm moving over this way a little bit.
Yeah, my pecs move when I'm counting. 1, 2, 3. There we go.
It was gruesome, and then it grew some more.
Took a weird twist there.
Yes, I know. I'm just going to let it go for a bit. Now, I'll tell you, Damage Control it's traumatic to stand on the side of the stage, right?
Yeah,
and watch him get through
absolutely.
it. Because it starts heavy, and then you go, okay, I got to get ready for this. I'm going to watch. I'm going to learn something. But it's so intense. And what he describes is just the tip of the iceberg of what, as a guitar player, he accomplishes, and with the rest of the band. Because not only is it difficult to play, but they're also creating music for an audience. So there's also that, and it's hard to put that into words, what that is. But that's usually at the end of the song. I'm the one sweating at the side of the stage, and I'm thinking, I got to go backstage and start warming up, right? It's like, wow.
But he nails it all the time.
Yes, he does, yeah. And he
make you
probably-
think I know.
I know, right?
I don't.
That's crazy. But it's funny that you should mention, like, what is the song that's like the hardest? There's two things at play, right? There's songs that have parts that we focus on as players, you know, a part that's fast, has an unusual stretch, time signature. Maybe there's a bit of a pedal dance you have to do to get it done. But the simple songs, for me, are always the hardest because you don't have the pedal or the flashy technical thing to wow the audience with. It's actually just you playing properly in time, in tune, just the right notes, nothing extra. So anything that's simple like that, like a ballad that hangs by a thread, is always the most nerve-wracking in a way, you know? So I think about that. And sometimes we'll do a song like Superstition in a way, which really has very little harmonic content in it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we have to make up music every night that we improvise with that. There are really very few parts. It's not like Highway Star, where we're an ensemble and we know exactly what we have to play. So it's a funny thing. Lighter material is harder to do.
And I will say that Joe does nail that every night. It's like mind-blowing. When he plays a ballad, there's like nothing like that in the world. It's just like perfectly done every night. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, for me, the opening song, we do Billy Cobham's Quadrant 4 off the Spectrum album. And some of the nights that I go on there and there's no lights, so the spotlight doesn't come, so I'm going, I can't hear the drums. So that first couple of moments is kind of, once you get through that, it's okay. But like Joe said, the most simple things, the song Hysteria with Def Leppard, the solo, you can whistle it. It's really simple. When me and Vivian Campbell play it, every single night, one of us will make a mistake. Because it's so simple, and you go, oh, is that me? And it's like, because we play the same thing. And for some reason, yeah, it's that's the hardest ones to do. And Switch 625, you know, where it's a definitive whistle-along kind of melody. They're the easy ones to screw up for some bizarre reason.
It's like being asked about your feelings or something.
Don't ask that.
You're too exposed.
Absolutely, right?
No.
It is, it's exposed there. Yeah. Everyone's listening to us and watching us. That's what it is right now. It'll be fine tomorrow.
But he actually, we were talking about this before too, that first song, if you watch the show, Phil comes out like no fear, just like a friggin' animal. It's unbelievable to watch.
No lights as well.
Yeah.
That was the thing.
And we're backstage like, oh crap, I gotta practice.
I'd like to take some questions from all of you guys here. I'm sure you got plenty to ask. Laura will be here to help you.
Can't see anybody.
I can.
Hi, this question is for John. Of all of your work, I think my favorite is your solo album that you, I guess, prepared for the first G3 and then it came out a while later. And my question is there a second solo album coming?
I hate you. I get asked that question so often. I would say this. I mean, I have definitely enough material for a second solo album. I'm playing some new material live. And the biggest problem I've had since that album came out is just being so busy and consumed with Dream Theater. We tour a lot. I produce the band. It's so much work and time that it's just literally difficult to find, 3 or 4 weeks to go in and record. So
No excuse.
no excuse.
I
Yeah,
just
you
thought I'd
see,
throw that in.
It's a big giant excuse, I guess. Like, I'll be recording in hotel rooms, but yeah, I will eventually. I have the goods.
What's going on with Dream Theater these days? Where are you guys at? with the next record?
So Dream Theater, the last thing we did, we finished up the 25th anniversary tour in celebration of the release of Images and Words. Yeah. So yeah, that came out 25 years ago, and so we did a tour with that. And now after G3, which we have a European leg as well, which will take us to May. After that, Dream Theater will go into the studio and work on a new album that will come out early 2019.
got any grand concepts in place yet?
No grand concepts for this one. We got the big grand concept of the astonishing out of our systems, and now it'll be a return to, traditional
Just some kick-ass
stuff.
songs.
Some kick-ass stuff. That's the name of the album. Actually. Yeah.
I would like to listen to a Dream Theater record called Some Kick-Ass Stuff.
Hey, people would just buy it out of interest.
Okay, hang on.
Hi, good night. First, here, this question is for the Master Joe face of everything. I'm very glad to be here in the same room of you, and all of you. This question is for all of the three of you. Now, very good English. I'm from Mexico. I came here to learn music, and my question is, what's the best advice that you could give us to the new guitar players to share this room 20 years later with people of my generation, as you are sharing with yours?
Oh, I would say that besides the obvious, practice what we talked about before, consistency, really working on your craft. For me, as a fan of music, I'm only interested in listening to music from somebody who has a unique story to tell from their life. And that, to me, is everything. So don't try to be like somebody else. It's all about you sharing your view of life with everybody else, because everybody is wondering what life is all about, and they want to hear anybody's perspective to see if it's going to help them out. And you have to keep that in mind, that we make music as musicians for people, so they use music in their life. That should be a very important concept that you accept. It's not, making music is not really, let's say as a guitar player, about you accomplishing something on the guitar. Maybe that's a small little part, a component of being a musician. But in the broadest sense, music is used by all of us to get through life, and so it has to be about something. And the greatest gift you have is that you're totally unique. So throw that into everything that you do, and that's the way everyone will recognize you. Yeah.
Do we have another question? Anybody?
So you guys have played with a lot of different musicians over the years. Can you tell me who you haven't played with that you would love to?
You know, my favorite songwriter is actually Sting. I think that would be cool. But that would be great to sit down and write a song with him, because I just love where he goes with that. I love Stanley Clarke. I love his approach to bass playing. And something he does that I've learned from Mutt Lange was, everyone says, well, he groove and melody. You know, if you're going to write a great song, you can't stray too far off a groove melody. As amazing and advanced as Stanley Clarke is,